Welcome back to our series, guys. If this is your first time here, we are currently restoring this old wooden century that we picked up and found in a field. You can check that video out right here. So in the last couple of videos, we talked about how there was rot in the frame rails here, and the keel has a bit of a hog, so it's got a bit of a dip in it. So we tried jacking that up and realized that we're gonna have to rebuild these frame supports. Now, the last video, I talked about how we were gonna start counting how much money we've put into this boat. Up until this point, it hasn't cost us anything to tear it down. Now we're gonna have to start putting a little bit of money into it, and we're gonna share with you guys exactly how much everything cost. So for today's video, we're going to be showing you how to restore and rebuild these frame support pieces. Now, a couple of them are gonna be exactly as they were. Unfortunately, this particular one was broken about here, so we're gonna have to kind of guess. But the ones down here, because this is dipped, we have to actually build them so that they're a little bit taller. I don't know if you can see there, but there's just a little bit of a gap. So we can't completely replicate these because we do have to make the new piece of wood a little bit taller there to take some of that curve out of this keel. We talked to the wood supplier about grabbing onto some white oak. Where we're located in this part of the world, getting our hands on white oak, not only the dimensions that we need, but the quantity that we need as well, is fairly expensive compared to mahogany. And when Andrew was at the wood store, he actually bought 3 different types of mahogany. So I can show you guys how we would select wood for a boat that we're restoring. So here's our 3 selections of mahogany, and we're gonna rate them from worst to best pieces that you could use on the hull side of a boat. We're not going to be talking about the framing of the boat because it's not really necessary for the look of the wood, but the wood that we would use on the deck or on the hull sides, that has to be very specific when you're trying to build a high quality restoration. So let's start with this piece of wood. Now, you may think it has some nice grain running through it, which is fine, but all of these little marks on here, they might have been possibly because this is on the outside of the tree and there was sticks beginning to form in this area, branches kind of starting. Whatever the reason is, we would never ever use this piece of wood on the side of a boat. And it's quite obvious if you take a look at it why that is. It's full of defects. Now don't get me wrong, the grain is nice, but the defects will detract away from that, and it really will accentuate this. Once we varnish it, you'll really see these stand out. So this is something that we would use for framing, something where we don't have to really look at it because of the quality of that wood. Now moving on to the second piece of wood. Here we have a different type called cathedrals. Now you have these little cathedrals, just like a church would, where it comes up and down and it makes kind of like a flame shape. Now these can be used on the hull sides, although they're not ideal. And the reason is you don't really want lots of detail in the wood. You want it to be fairly the same. So when you're looking at it, it looks quite nice. If we were to use this on a boat, we would have to use nothing but cathedrals on the boat to make it blend together. And ultimately what we would be doing to all of these pieces of wood, granted they're a little bit thin, is we would cut right in the middle and we'd split it in half. So we have 2 identical pieces of wood. And then coming over to the boat, we'd put 1/2 of it here and 1/2 of it here. That's called book matching. And then you have identical pieces of wood on the ship. So if you look at it this way, it's the same. This particular boat, nobody book matched it. So the wood is completely different on one side versus another. Again, on a high quality build, that's what you would be looking at doing. So while this piece can be used for hull sides, it's not exactly ideal. Definitely I would choose this piece over that one. And if you guys are picking out wood for your boats, make sure you're going in person and actually picking the pieces out, because you really don't want to be building a boat with this one. And if you're trying to do a really nice concours level, you don't want to use this piece either. Now this piece of wood, this is the creme de la creme. This piece is exactly what you are looking for. Now, what this piece is referred to as is ribbing grain, or sometimes they refer to it as quarter sawn wood. and you can see how beautiful this wood is. Just perfectly even, running all the ways up. If you could get only this type of wood for a boat, this would be the most ideal selection of wood. Now, typically these are quite hard to get your hands on. If you do manage to find a bunch of them, they are pretty expensive, but this is for concours level. This would be for like the Cobra that we have. If we were to restore the Cobra, we would only be looking for this kind of wood. We'd steer pretty clear away from this, and we would never even dream of that. So we're not gonna be doing haul sides on this one. We might down the road, but we just wanted to show you guys the examples of what the different types of mahoganies are and why it's so important that you select the right piece of wood. Because again, once this gets a varnish on it, all this color is really gonna come up. You're gonna notice these details. You're gonna notice every one of these lines, and these little white spots are really gonna stand out. So all that being said, our next step now is I'm going to disassemble the frames that have issues, mark them and take them off. And then once I have them all, I can start putting them on here like Tetris pieces, so I can line it up and then cut it out. This way I make the best use of the wood. If I was to just take this one, plop it on here and cut it, I might be wasting some of the wood, which is never good. You want to make sure that you get the most out of it you possibly can, not only budget-wise, but you know, we try to conserve the wood as much as possible. Now, as for the thickness of the wood, if you take a look here, it's actually a little bit thicker on the new piece, which is actually perfectly ideal. You never want to be a little bit thinner. So with this, if I'm not happy with how thick it is, I can run it through the machine that'll cut this down thickness-wise, so it's a little bit thinner. But quite honestly, I mean, thicker framework isn't the end of the world, so yeah. So enough yapping, we're gonna get back to the boat here, and we're gonna start taking off the frame sections. So this is kind of funny. I have the carriage bolt here, and I have a nut on this side, and I'm sitting here trying to spin this nut off. I'm like, wow, it's loose. Yeah, carriage bolt isn't moving, and it keeps spinning and spinning and spinning. And the problem is, if you look, there you go, it's a fake bolt. So there we are. I've taken out 2 of the frames on both sides, and I'm actually gonna stop there. Now, the reason for that is if I keep going and I pull all of these frames out, there's gonna be some major issues with lining that keel up. It's gonna be a lot more difficult, and it could potentially cause a lot of damage just because there's not a lot of rigidity in there. So because I only took out the 2 frames on either side, we still have lots of support to this keel, and we can get started on building them. So for the first time in this series, I'm going to be doing a little bit of woodworking. Take you guys over next door to the woodworking shop there, and we will start to replicate these pieces. So here we are over in the woodworking section, and we're going to start off by cleaning up all the nails or anything protruding from here, so we can then template it down onto the wood. So I'm going to go ahead and get those clean really quick. We got all of our pieces here. So to take an account of what we have 2 of these pieces, 2 of these, the connector, this little shift piece, and then whatever was left of the connector for these ones. So something I want to note here, so if you take a look, for example, at these 2, so they are actually the same piece. Now if you take a look, you can line them up just like that, and I can verify that they're the same, just double checking. So because this end is broken here, it's not the end of the world. we can replicate this piece here, which is in much better condition, and that will give us this one here. Now, one thing I will mention, I said this in the last video, I'm not going to be cutting out these grooves where the battens will be laying in, and the reason for that is once this is in place, I might be off if I preemptively cut these. So what we'll end up doing is once we have these pieces made, then we'll go ahead and cut this out with the router. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to use the best piece out of both of these. Again, this one's completely destroyed on the front, just from time and whatever else may have affected that, but this one is in pretty good condition. I need to verify, of course, that they're the same lengths, and it seems to be that they're approximately the same length, or they used to be. So I'm going to actually just make this my copy. I'm going to make 2 of these, put the broken one off to the side, make 2 of these, and then make 1 of these. I might be able to use this on here for this piece, but probably not. Probably what I'll end up doing is just making these 2, ignoring this crossover piece for now, and then once it's in place I can just build something out of cardboard and go that way. So what I'm going to do next is get down here and trace out the lines, and we can begin cutting it. Now, it sounds funny to say, but I have seen in the past where guys will accidentally slip and mark the damage out on this piece of wood, and then when they're cutting it out, they'll forget whether or not that damage was meant to be there, and they'll actually cut the damage into the new piece. I have seen that happen a few times. So when you're doing this, just kind of guesstimate roughly where it would be if it was in good condition, because down the road you're going to forget things like that, and it's going to lead to absolute chaos. You're going to be asking yourself, why was this there? What did I forget? And that is not a fun road to be down. And again, make sure that you are checking these for similarities. For example, right here, you see how it goes down and then it comes back up and then it almost goes flat? I'm not sure if this is meant to be here, if it's damaged, so I'm just going to briefly check the other piece to see how similar it is. And on here I can see it goes down, comes up, and then it goes flat. So I know for a fact that if I was to copy this roughly, it would be the right answer. Now you can always, once this is off, you can always put this on top of it and just see how close it lays out, but I'm not super concerned. I always go just a little bit over when I cut, so if I have a line here, I'm going to be cutting on this side of it. Keep in mind this has been breaking down and shrinking and it's been rotting, so the exact sizes may not be correct. So it's always nice to leave yourself just a little extra and then cut on this side of the pencil line. So there we go, we got this one marked out. I'm going to unclamp it from the table, move it back and out of the way. You can get a good look at the first piece we've made. Now, I did go ahead and put these batten cuts into here just for visual representation. It makes it a lot easier, you know, once this piece is cut out, just kind of visualize where these are supposed to go. And on the off chance that I actually got them correct, it's a lot easier to see the depth and the marks and everything. So keep marks on there, but just keep in mind that you might not be cutting these out until a little bit later. So the next trick to conserve wood is I'm just going to be trying to line these up in a way that makes sense. If I cut like this, I'm going to have a bunch of wasted wood, so maybe I cut it like that. Just thinking about these little steps can actually save you time. The other reason for that is this line right here that I cut on, right here, will actually become the cut line for both pieces. So it saves me some cutting, saves me some wood. So getting everything lined up ahead of time is really beneficial to keeping things, you know, efficient. Now, one thing I want to mention is you may have noticed that I didn't actually flip this board over at all. And the reason I didn't flip it over is you really have to pay attention to these wood pieces. But if you look down the edge of this side is higher than this side is. There's a taper to it. Now that makes sense, of course, because when the frame is in there, the wood is going to be at an angle, and it's going to be kind of a sloping curve on the whole boat surface. So the tops of these are going to be higher. So what you want to do is you want to identify which side is the higher spot, lay it down, mark the higher spot, because if you lay it down the wrong way and you trace this out and mark the lower spot, there's nothing you can do to salvage this piece of wood. It'll just simply be too small. So just a little tip, make sure you're checking the angles on everything, because there is tiny little angles on all of these pieces. This one's really easy to see. You can see how tilted it is side to side. So I would trace out this part. Again, don't trace this out. You will make the mistake of doing that if you trace out this side, and it will leave you with a scrap piece of wood. So I got this piece, I got the taper down the right way, and I'm going to continue marking out the piece of wood onto here. Now, my father was a structures technician for about 25, 30 years, and he taught me a number of tricks about laying stuff out and building things. So this is one of the tricks that he taught me. It's called consolidating. So what we're going to do is there's all these little bumps in the line that I made. It's obviously not a straight line. Rather than getting a ruler and using it to make a straight line, I'm actually going to use this tape. Now the reason for that is I don't know if it's actually supposed to be a straight line from here to here. As humans, you know, we always want everything to be nice and perfect, but by using the tape, it takes up the deviance. So if I'm deviating off about this much in an area about this long, and I use the tape, it will fix that tiny little deviation, and it'll also follow any hidden curves to the pieces that we're making. Now, just for an example, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here with this piece. So you can see how there's the little bumps and everything. And, you know, we don't have to get this crazy with a piece of wood, but if you just take a little piece of tape and you mark just like that, it creates a lot straighter of a line that you can cut on. And if you start going into the tape on the bandsaw, it'll also kind of be very obvious to you that you've hit the tape. So not only does it act as a safety guard when you're cutting, but it also kind of cleans the lines up you have and makes them stand out a bit more on the piece of wood. So I'm going to go ahead and consolidate the rest of the lines on this piece, and then we can cut this out. Now, of course, you don't have to get this detailed when you're doing woodworking, but it's kind of a force of habit, and I just like to show best practice. So if you are replicating something that's super specific and you have to be very careful with tolerances, I always recommend using this tape. Again, even if you're not going to be using it for the tolerances, it's a really good safety on the bandsaw, because you'll see if you're running into it. Whereas with a pencil line, sometimes it's hard to see that with the grain. So this is just kind of the way I like to do it. So, you know, everyone has their own methods, but I've always found this works best for me. Now, before my dad and I started working here at Absolute Classics, we actually worked together fabricating hot rods. So I spent a number of years doing fabrication with him. Now, I'm going to teach you another trick here. So I'm not going to use it in this case, but if you ever need to for whatever reason, he showed me a little trick called making a pelt. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to show you on this piece, because I don't need it anymore, but what we're going to do is this, and we're going to layer the shape that we've made with masking tape. You don't have to be anywhere near as accurate as you were laying it out originally, but you'll go and lay out the pieces like this. Once they're laid out one direction, then you start going this direction, and then you can do some cross-hatching. Typically, we like to do 3 layers. I'm just gonna do some lengthwise ones because I'm just showing you an example. Now, if you're so inclined, what you can do, instead of recreating it off of the wood piece, is you can make identical pieces by creating these pelts and layering them with masking tape. Then you can peel this off, and you can use it like a big sticker and put it down in a different spot and mark it out. It's a very useful trick. And then another thing too is if you're doing this on, like, let's say a curved surface, if you put the fiberglass reinforced tape on the curved surface, it'll actually hold its shape. Like, let's say for example you're doing a big ball and you wanted to template that ball. Lay down masking tape, lay down the fiberglass reinforced tape, more masking tape, and when you take that off, it'll be like a cap, it'll retain its shape. So things like that are really awesome because if you have a 3D template, that means you can be matching it up to the piece that you're using. And to keep it so that it doesn't stick, another little trick is baby powder. You put a little bit of baby powder on there, and then you have a 3D template, like I said, you can put onto the object, see where you have to trim it down, see if it shapes. That was a really useful trick for us because we did a lot of metalworking, and when you're using the crown roller, it's really hard to tell if you have the right shape without creating a pelt or some way of measuring it. So that's a little trick we used. Again, if I wanted to copy this here to here, I could peel this, put this down, and have a perfect copy. But in this particular case, I'm just making some frame pieces. I'm not super worried about ultra tight details, so I'm just gonna cut them out the way they are. So yeah. So now we're gonna get on the bandsaw here and cut out one of these pieces, and yeah, we'll see how it turns out. So there we go, we got our first piece cut out. Now I'm just gonna go over and very carefully just get this lined up so it's nice and straight, but that'll be our first piece. So let's see how this piece compares to the piece that we templated. So we'll get this on here and we'll double check and just make sure. So we got everything lined up really nice, exactly how I want it. And we got just enough room to make it look nice when we sand it. So yeah, everything looks really good. And of course, the other thing we can do too is take this over to the boat and just make sure that it all lines up. Obviously, the less wood we waste, the better. So if there is a mistake, I want to know now before I make my second piece. So here I have it in place, mocked up with the other piece. Now that piece would have gone here before, but I'm just putting it in line here just to see the similarities I have. And also I want to make sure that the important lines are correct. Now the important line would be, like I said in a previous video, from this part to this part, and this part to this part. So I want to make sure that it's all lined up and nice and smooth. So right now, it's not bad. I would like it up a little bit higher. I think right there, it's just a little bit low. So in order to do that, I'm gonna go down under here and I'm just gonna cut a little bit away so that this can kind of come up. Again, knowing what's important when you make these pieces is really gonna help you build them. And then when we look at how it's sitting here, it's actually a little high, which is perfect. I prefer it to be a little high. Like I said, this is why I'm not cutting the battens now, because if I did have them cut, I would have to go down even deeper than before, because once this comes up, these are gonna get a little more shallow. So it's just making more work for yourself if you were to do something like this, because you'd have to cut it twice. So again, I'm gonna make sure that I keep this nice height here. I'm gonna get this one coming up a little bit more, but I think as for fitment, it fits really nice in there. And again, keep in mind, like I just said, on what's important. This little angle right here, it's open on one side, it's not on the other. I could fight that, I could fit that, I can make it look perfect. But how's the rest of the boat? Look at the fitment here and here. Well, this one doesn't really count, but you get what I'm saying. That's not the important line. So if I was chasing after something like this, I would be pulling this whole piece over, potentially messing up something over here. So really know when to pick your battles and know what to start with once you have everything set, then you can fidget with stuff like this. But so I've just quickly cut a little bit down here so that this fits and it's sticking up, so I can shave this all down and get it fitting really nice in here. So that's what that one looks like, and then we'll move on to cutting the next piece. So now I'm going to take this one out of here, and we can see if this piece will fit too. I also just really wanted to say thanks for all the support we've gotten for this channel. You guys have been really awesome and really receptive. We've gotten a lot of really cool comments and had a lot of good interactions with a lot of people. So I'd just like to thank you guys all for helping us do what we love and doing it on YouTube. We've had a couple of people ask us a few times if we have Patreon. We currently don't have a Patreon. I don't believe we're planning on setting one up, but in the future, we are hoping to, once we get to that 500 subscriber mark, set up a YouTube membership and go from there, and maybe get you guys some more information that way. So if you guys like the video series and you're not really sure if you should subscribe or not, we'd really appreciate it. Help us out a lot. Because like I said, once you get to 500 subscribers, that opens up a few more options for us. So we have lots of plans and ideas and stuff we want to do. Not only that, but I mean, if you're in the membership on YouTube, we can provide you guys with direct support. I know a lot of people that I've talked to that watch the videos are actually building their own boats as well, kind of along as we go here. And if they need any parts or help, or you have any questions whatsoever, the YouTube membership's the way to do it. We'll help out to the best of our ability with whatever you guys need. And that being said too, I mean, if you're just looking for parts for something, we have a website set up right now with all sorts of parts. We have kept every part you could possibly think of for these older boats. I mean, we have duplicates of them, and if you can't find that one piece of trim or that one item or that one steering thing, just hit us up. The odds are we have one, we know where we can get one. And not only that, we carry all sorts of boating stuff. So if you guys are interested, I'll leave the website link down below. We don't only broker boats and sell them, but like I said, we also sell parts. So yeah, anyways, let's take a look at the fitment here. So I kind of banged that all in place there. Now this one is sitting a little high, which is perfect. And then if we take a look at the front of it here, let's just see, again, that's sitting nice and high as well. So you can see how that kind of runs up a little bit higher. That is perfect. That means we can plane this down and get it all to match. It's looking symmetrical. I'm happy with that. So next I'm gonna make the piece that goes across the both of them and get that all set up. So let's get that one done. So here's the last piece for this part of the frame right here. So I'm gonna slip that on in. Something I did notice is, due to the fact that this wood is quite old, this frame right here, we're actually really close to this piece just slipping on in there without having to plane these down at all. So what I might actually do is just take a little file and just clean this edge up a little bit, just so that this piece of wood can fit quite nice in there. There's nothing wrong with adding a little bit more strength to the frame. So there we go, we got those pieces put in place. You can see what that looks like from here. And I just, like I mentioned earlier, I took a file and I went just along the sides here to kind of clean this up, and they both just slipped in really nice in there. It's all nice and clean, and then this is all nice as well. We take a look once more. This is slightly up. These are down in position. You can see right there that they're touching on the wood on both places. And then right here, this is also touching down as well. One thing that can happen is if you fasten the top of the keel naturally doesn't really move that much, but it does move enough that if you were to fasten this down here, you might actually be lifting up here. So you gotta start with these points, get that nice and tight to there, and then bring the keel down to this piece. And you'll find it'll fit a lot better than if you were to attach it to the keel and work your way outwards. Because these control, you know, the structure of the boat, but their main purpose is to control the keel and where that sits. So by setting it on the frames and then working on the keel, you'll have a nice fitment. So everything seems to fit really good. I'm super happy with it. So I'm going to fasten it down where it's sitting, and that should be just about it. Now I am going to leave that for next video. So if you guys want to stay tuned and check back next week, I'll be showing you how I'm fastening this down, and I will be continuing on with doing the rest of the bottom. And keep in mind, once we're done that, then I'll show you how to put the marine plywood on the bottom of this. We'll flip it over, reassemble it, and yeah, hopefully we can take it out in the water. It's becoming winter, so hopefully the timing of this is that we're done right when winter is, but you never know. We'll never know what stage it'll be in, but yeah, just once again, thank you so much for watching this video. If you guys found anything interesting, or if you found anything educational at all, please make sure you at least drop a comment and subscribe if you can. It helps out every single one. So thank you very much.